Welcome back to Van Hozochi Mamargo Gasabo TV. You're going to be with me, Princess Mugisha. Let's start with the news headlines. The International Association of Universities 2025 experts convene in Kigali to forge new path for the trust in higher education. On the international scene, at least 46 died after the two buses collided on Ugandan highway. US sanctions Russia, two largest oil companies, and calls on Moscow to agree to immediate ceasefire. Let's take a short break and be back into the news details. Welcome back into the news details, and let's start to our news in Rwanda, where Ambassador and the permanent representative of the Republic of Rwanda to the United Nations, Martin Goga, at the 22nd October General Assembly of the 20th Plenary Meeting on the International Review Mechanism for Criminal Tribunals.
Over the years, our cooperation with both the ICTR and the mechanism has been unwavering, dignified, and results-oriented. Rwanda remains fully prepared and willing to enforce the sentences of persons convicted by the ICTR and the mechanism as part of our enduring partnership in upholding international criminal justice. When Rwanda and the United Nations signed the Enforcement of Sentences Agreement in the year 2008, ICTR officials described it as, and I quote, milestone in cooperation, end of quote, acknowledging Rwanda's significant progress in correctional standards, and we are proud to have lived up to that promise. Today, Rwanda reaffirms its readiness to carry forward the mechanism's mandate by assuming responsibility for the 25 convicted persons in full compliance with the international standards and with the utmost respect for their rights and dignity. For Rwanda, the enforcement of sentences is not viewed as a burden, but as a continuation of our national journey towards justice, reconciliation, and the rule of law that began after 1994. Rwanda remains in strict compliance with the agreement on the enforcement of sentences signed with the United Nations on the 4th of March 2008. Article 11, Sub-Article 1A of that agreement outlines the cost-related obligations of the tribunal, and Rwanda confirms that these are well understood and will be met. The agreement continues to provide the legal foundation for our cooperation and has been periodically reviewed with the UN Office of Legal Affairs and the Registrar of the mechanism. No obstacles to its full implementation exist.
Next story, academics, policymakers, and education leaders from across the globe are gathered in Kigali for the 2025 International Association of Universities Conference hosted by the University of Rwanda. Held under the theme of Building Trust in Higher Education, the three-day conference opened on Tuesday, October 21st at the Kigali Conference and Exhibition Village and runs through Thursday, October 23rd. The event marks a milestone of Rwanda and the region as the first time the AU International Conference has been held in East Africa. Over 200 delegates from 56 countries are attending, engaging in discussion on how universities can rebuild and sustain public trust amid an era of social, technological, and ideological disruption. The conference focus on trust comes at a time when universities globally are facing heightened scrutiny. Questions are being raised about the relevance, impact, and trustworthiness of their operation, especially in the light of the rapid technological advancement and societal changes. The discussion is aimed to address these issues and forge a new path for the universities to establish their credibility in age marked by the political and social unrest. Andrew Dex, the president of AU, said to the tone of the conference, reflecting on the organization of the 75-year legacy and its continued commitment to advancing higher education globally, emphasized that this year's theme was particularly relevant as trust in universities being questioned across the world. Davis Kayihura, the vice-chancellor of the University of Rwanda, expressed the institution's excitement in being part of this global conversation. He noted the unique opportunity for African universities to share the experiences and the challenges with their international counterparts. Now let's turn our focus to this story where the two-day Land Force Commander Simple held in Kigali concluded with a productive discussions aimed at inspiring African leaders to take on ownership and strengthen cooperation in addressing the complex security challenges that impede the continent's development. It was officially closed by the Rwandan Minister of Defense, Honorable Juvenal Marizamunda.
The Chiefs of Defense Staff, distinguished Land Force Commanders, Excellencies, General Officers, Senior Officers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. As we conclude the second edition of the Land Force Commanders Symposium, allow me to express my sincere appreciation to all delegations for responding positively to our invitation and for your insightful contributions throughout the deliberations. Over the past 2 days, you have collectively examined the evolving nature of global and regional security and reaffirmed the shared commitment to strengthen the capabilities, professionalism, and readiness of our respective land forces. These discussions remind us that we operate in an increasingly complex and unpredictable environment, one where conflicts are asymmetric, threats are transnational, and crises demand decisive action. In such times, the vital role of land forces cannot be overstated. Land forces remain the first responders in a crisis, the stabilizing force during turmoil, and the foundation upon which peace is rebuilt. I commend the Land Force commanders and all delegates for the constructive and highly engaging discussions that have defined this symposium. You have demonstrated that collaboration, openness, and sharing experiences are powerful tools in strengthening collective security. The symposium has highlighted the imperative of leveraging new technologies, particularly in drone warfare and digital domains, reaffirmed the need to deepen civil-military cooperation, underscored the complementarity of bilateral and multilateral mechanisms to restore peace and security, and the critical importance of interoperability and jointness in the conduct of operations. As I conclude, I like to emphasize the importance of partnerships, especially in the areas of joint training and professional exchange in forging a stable and prosperous future for our continent and beyond. Let me end by thanking you once again for your dedication, professionalism, and partnership. May the bonds of friendship and cooperation strengthened here in Kigali continue to grow, guiding us towards a safer and more secure world. Thank you, and I wish you all safe travels and continued success in your respective endeavors.
Kasha to break to be back into the national news.
Kiriya bacu turabamenyesha ko Danobe Home yabaye Smart Home. Ni impinduka zigamije kongera ibicuruzwa byiza kandi biramba. By'umwihariko ku biciro bibanogeye n'uburyo bwo kwishyura buboroheye. Wadusanga aho dukorera KBC Kimihurura cyangwa ugasura urubuga rwacu wa/smarthome.rawa. Wanaduhamagara cyangwa se ukatwandikira ku murongo wa telefone ukurikira 07 88 90 50 90.
Let's take a look into the international news where the President Trump administration on Wednesday imposed sanctions on Russia's two largest oil companies as it called on Moscow to agree on immediate ceasefire with Ukraine. Sandra Tumukund proceeds.
Let's start on international news on Africa. Ugandan police had early reported a death of 63, but later reduced it to 46, saying some victims found unconsciousness at the accident scene were still alive. Several other people were injured in the crash that happened after midnight local time on the highway to Gulu, a major city of northern Uganda. Two bus drivers going in opposite directions attempted to overtake other vehicles and collided near to the town of Kirjandogo, according to the police. Fatal road crashes are common in Uganda and elsewhere in East Africa, where roads are often narrow. Police usually blame such accidents on speeding drivers. The death toll in the latest crash in Uganda is uncommonly high, said Irene Nakasita, a Red Cross spokeswoman who described the victims left bleeding with broken limbs. She said the imagery from the scene were too gruesome to share. Most of the injured people are receiving treatment at the government hospital nearby. In Uganda, 5,400 people were killed in road crashes in 2024. That number rose from 4,600 in 2023. In addition to reckless driving and bad infrastructure, there is poor enforcement of traffic rules, especially for heavy vehicles moving at night, said Joseph Beyanga, a road safety campaigner who for years has been trying to raise awareness about road carnage in Uganda. Beyanga, campaigning as a job worker, organizes regular walks from Kampala, the Ugandan capital, into the countryside that are often attended by hundreds of followers. His next event, planned for November, will be a memorial walk of more than 60 kilometers in memory of hundreds of thousands killed in road crashes over the years. Turning to our next story, the Trump administration on Wednesday imposed the sanctions on Russia's two largest oil companies as they called on Moscow to agree to an immediate ceasefire in the war with Ukraine. President Donald Trump had for weeks signed and could impose penalties against Russia for its continuation of the war, but had failed to take major punitive measures until Wednesday. The announcement came as Trump said he had cancelled an anticipated meeting with Putin because he didn't feel like we're going to get to the place we have to get. In remarks in the Oval Office, Trump explained he felt it was time for the sanctions, noting he waited a long time to impose them. Still, the US president said he hopes they won't be on for long because the war will end. Trump said last week that he intended to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Budapest. However, Trump said on Wednesday he had cancelled that anticipated summit, telling reporters, "It just didn't feel right to me," although he said they would meet in the future. CNN reported earlier this week that Trump's quick meeting with Putin had stalled out, with an administration official saying Tuesday there were no plans for a summit between the two in the immediate future. The impact of the new US sanctions will be greatly determined by how they are implemented and whether the administration pushes ahead with secondary sanctions, one expert told CNN. Concluding our international news, France is backing away from a recent commitment to intervene more forceful to stop small boats from crossing the English Channel, according to multiple sources contacted by BBC. There is evidence that France's current political turmoil is partly to blame, but it will come as a blow to the UK government's attempt to tackle the issue. In the meantime, dangerous, overcrowded, inflatable boats continue to leave the coast on the almost daily basis from a shallow tidal canal near the port of Dunkirk, while the man in charge of border security in the UK, Martin Hewitt, has already expressed frustration at French delays. The BBC has now heard from a number of sources in France that promises of new maritime doctrine which would attempt to intercept inflatable boats and pull them back to shore al-Halo. Former Interior Minister Bruno Litalo was widely credited, not last in the UK, with driving more aggressive approach in the Channel. That culminated last July with a summit between President Emmanuel Macron and Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer. The focus then was on plans to intercept the so-called taxi boats now used by the smugglers to cross the coastline, collecting passengers already standing in the water. Fresh policy intervened against the overcrowded taxi boats since it constitutes too great a risk of both officers and the civilians. In London, the Prime Minister's spokesman reacted immediately to our footage, calling it. But since then, Litelu has lost his job as minister in the latest of several chaotic reshuffles, and distracted French government appears to be focused on other crises. Saula Sandra Tumkund, Morgwa Gasabo TV.
As we come to the end of the news edition today, let's go back with the news headlines. The International Association of Universities 2025 experts convene in Kigali to forge a new path for trust in higher education. On the international scene, at least 46 days after the two buses collided on Ugandan highway. United States sanctioned Russia to adjust oil companies and calls on Moscow to agree to immediate ceasefire. Thanks for having me. Stay tuned.